I think that, so one thing is that when I was younger and I used to be like getting in trouble at school and so forth, one of the things my mom used to always say is like, don't be up there being a follower. Russells are leaders. Russells are leaders. Even if I'm the ring leader of the situation, your mama, parents are articulate. I was thinking like, you're being a follower, right? Like, it can't be my baby. My baby ain't doing that. You being a follower. But I'm like, but she would always say, Russell's the leaders, Russell's the leaders. But I think the biggest thing is like, I think early on, I was always just experiential. It's like I was willing to experiment with certain things to see how it would work out. So I think some of it was like innate, because it was like I came from such a low place in my life early on. It's like everything was a win. It's like because I come from like I told y'all before, like I used to eat MREs. Like I used to live with my aunt the first part of my life. And people who don't know what MREs is called, is meals ready to eat. So it's like when my aunt's husband, he was in Desert Storm. So he used to send back MREs. And my aunt was like, she was on drugs really bad. But she raised me up until like 3rd grade. So we used to like eat these MREs sometimes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, all that. So it's like, I come from that. So it's like every opportunity was like an opportunity to get better. So it's like, what do I really got to lose?
Welcome to the $1 Million Equation Podcast, a podcast about the easiest, fastest way to build $1 million business based on the best-selling book, The $1 Million Equation. If you love business, each episode reveals all of the core fundamental essentials for growth. Now, here's your host, Richelle Shaw.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl, Richelle Shaw again. And so as I told you through this whole interview series, that I'm only interviewing my friends, people that I know who are actually serving on purpose and making an impact. And so today is super duper special for me. I already prefaced this with, I'm not going to cry, but I'm sure I am going to cry. So it is what it is. Welcome to the show, my friend Marquel Russell. What's happening?
Hey! I'm excited to be here.
Introduce yourself, because I can't introduce you. Introduce yourself.
So I'm Marquel Russell. I am, I guess, so many things, right? I think most importantly, a father, my husband, a man of God. I'm a entrepreneur supremacist. I love entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. And I'm just obsessed with entrepreneurship. I'm a teacher, right? I love taking complicated concepts to some and like breaking them down so people can get it, specifically entrepreneurs. I'm the king of client attraction. I don't know. I'm just, I just love what I do. To date, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Client Attraction University. To date, we've helped our clients do over $1 billion in revenue. I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out of high school in 10th grade. So I don't ever want to leave that out because I think that's very important. I dropped out of high school in 10th grade, started selling drugs at a very young age. When I had my first son, I was 19 and I was in jail when he was born. I met my first son when I was, fun fact, right, when I met my first son in visitation for the first time. His mom brought him to see me and I was in visitation. So a conqueror, right? So I guess a list of things. And I'm blessed to be here.
A list of things, a conqueror, that is the absolute truth. So one of the things that we share very much in common is that we're both obsessed with entrepreneurship, right? One of the things that I've been doing over all of these interviews is, even when I started my podcast, I was like, I'm not interviewing anybody because I don't want to be dependent on finding somebody to interview to bring them content, right?
Right.
Because I think at that point, then you have somebody else vetting them. And I only want to interview my friends. Mm-hmm. I was like, people who I know who are actually making an impact, and who understand this business. So tell me, how did you get into internet marketing, right? Like that story is always fun to hear.
Yeah, it's the craziest story ever, right? So I was full-time in the streets, right? Selling drugs. That was like my game. That's how I fed my son, that's how I paid. That's what I did, right? Now, while I was doing that, I started an entertainment company. So when I got out of jail at 19, I said, you know what? I'm gonna do the job thing. I never did the job thing. I don't want to go back to jail. My dad wasn't around growing up. I want to make sure I'm here for my son. So I said, I know one job isn't going to make me enough money, so I'm going to get me 2 jobs, right? That linear thing. Well, let me just get 2 jobs, right? And I found out that 2 jobs is actually for 2 people, right? So I did the job thing. I started changing oil and tires on 18-wheelers, the total opposite of what I was doing before. I'm covered in oil every day, look like a mechanic. It was terrible, right? So I was like, I did it for 2 weeks, and I was like, man, every hour I get paid $8. They make like $300 off my $8. That's pimping. Like where I'm from, it's like I can't do this no more. So I went back into the streets and I started an entertainment. Well, I went back to selling drugs. That's what I knew best. And I was like, all right, and a lot of the rappers I grew up in, a lot of the people I grew up watching, they all came from the streets or came from the hood or whatever, and they started entertainment levels. So I grew up on like Master P and, the Jay Princes and the Cash Money, Birdman. So a lot of them kind of did those type of plays. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna start an entertainment label, a record label, basically. So I knew people who rap, I knew people who did beats. So I just brought them together. I was the visionary behind it. So I just brought them together. I bought I think I was like 20, right? And so I got a storefront. It was at one point a hair salon. So we rented it out, we stripped it out, we turned it into a studio. And a buddy of mine whose house we were doing music at, he was his dad's house, he was in the basement. So I was like, hey man, at your house, we can only be there at certain times, right? And we can only do certain things there because it's your parents' house. So I was like, just bring your equipment to this place, I got the studio, I'm gonna pay the rent, everything. All you gotta do is have your equipment there and just be there to run it because I don't know how to work in it. So we did that. Started picking up a little steam. I had one artist I was managing. We started to take off, and we started doing performances and stuff like that. So people used to see us in the club so much. Mind you, we're not even old enough to be in the club.
Aren't you 20? Like, how is this working?
We're like 20. We're not even old enough to be. When I turned, we had this one strip club we used to go to all the time. I turned 21 in that club. When I turned 21, and they were like, everybody called me Chill then. They was like, hey, Chill, how old are you turning? And I was like, 21. And they was like, 21? Like, you've been coming here like 3 or 4 years, bro. Like, what do you mean 21? And I was like, yeah. Now, here's the crazy part. I was one of the oldest in my crew. So I had people who was with me 16, 17, and I'm getting like the artist I was managing, we're like 2 years difference, right? So it's like, I'm getting him in because ain't nobody, when they with me, they don't really need no ID. I'm like, hey, these my people, they good. All right, cool. So we've been in the club so much. One of the guys who used to be there also, he was like, hey, my cousin, he's opening a club and he wants to have some different club hosts to host different nights. Cause like here, I don't know how it is in every city, but I know most cities the same. But here, the clubs are fueled by club hosts. So different hosts, different club promoters, they'll get school. Perfect. So in my city, the clubs are fueled by club promoters. So I ended up getting a night to promote at this club, and I didn't really know about club promotions, but I was like, okay, it's a great opportunity. So we did the club thing, it started to pick up, and then one night I was in another buddy of mine club because I was going to see his album release party. And while I was in, I got introduced to internet marketing. I mean, not internet marketing, I was introduced to network marketing. So he told me, hey man, and he thought I was my brother, who I'm actually going to meet with for lunch today, right? So he thought I was him, and he was like, but I knew who he was. Well, I didn't know who he was, but I knew his face. So he was like, hey, how many people you know got a cell phone? And I was like, everybody I know got a cell phone. And he was like, what if every time they paid that bill, you got paid? And I was like, well, that'd be dope. He was like, well, this week, one of my mentors is gonna be in town. She's a millionaire. She's looking for some leaders to expand with in the area. So I'm like, cool. So I went to the meeting that week, took one of my brothers with me. He dead in the streets as well. He got his pistol on him and everything, so because we don't know where we're going. So we go, we see the presentation, and I'm like, this is crazy. And that's all you gotta do is get two, and they'll get two, and they'll get two. You're making millions of dollars. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna kill this. So we jumped. It was $500 to get started. I was like, hey, y'all take cash? And he was like, no, you gotta have a card. I'm like, we don't got no cards. So he showed me how to get a prepaid card at Walmart a couple days later. I paid my way. I paid half my brother's way to get in. So I already had one. I was like, okay, one more. It's gonna be easy. So I started showing other people. Everybody was telling me it was a pyramid scheme. I was crazy. They got blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow. I'm like, y'all were already familiar with this, but nobody ever mentioned this to me before. But my mom, God rest her soul, she always been a hustler. So I was like, I'm gonna show it to her and see if she sees anything, right? And because if it's some games, she'll know. So I showed it to her. She watched the video. She hit me back, and she was like, well, if you market yourself, it can work. So I was like, okay. So I tried to get my mom signed up for my grandma signed up for the home security system that they had. Couldn't get her approved. It was a mess. So one day, I went to one of the conferences. One of the guys who recruited me invited me to the conference, because they do these quarterly conferences in network marketing. And it was here in Atlanta. I went in there, it was like 4,000 Black people there, excited, talking positive. I had never seen anything like it in my life. And I was like, they could have got me, but ain't no way they could have tricked all of these people. So I don't know what happened. I came out, something about these conferences, I came out and I was full speed ahead. I recruited some people. A couple weeks later, I ran out of people to talk to, but one of the people I recruited, she sent me a link to a 4-part video series. And it's kind of like a launch series, right? But I didn't know that. And so I watched this 4-part video series. I watched it, and the dude was talking about how you build a network marketing business without doing home parties, without doing home meetings, without doing that. I'm like, wow. So I'm watching it, and at the end, he sells this, at the end of each video, actually, he sells this, his ebook, right? And it's a $40 ebook. Again, I never bought them online before. I didn't know nothing about none of this stuff. And he was like, hey, this will do it. So I was like, all right, great. And this was just a whole new way of thinking through this. And then when I bought the book, after reading the sales letter for like 50 times, I finally bought it, and it took me through all these upsells. But of course, I ain't had no money on my prepaid card. So I had to reload my card, go back through it to get all the upsells and all that. And in the book, dude was like, your ideal client, if you want to build a network marketing business, is other network marketers, because they already buy network marketing opportunities. And he was like, the best way to get them is add value to them. They're going to see you know what you're talking about, and then they're going to want to join your network marketing business. And he was like, the best way to do that is just give them a copy of this book. And he was like, when they buy a copy of this book for $40, I'm going to give you 20 of it. So that was like my first commission that I made online as well. And when I made this $20 commission, I was like, oh, it is on. So I was just obsessed. And I'm the type of person, I always go to the root. So it's like when people mention other people, like, hey, my mentor was this, or blah, 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 I start going down all these different rabbit holes. So I started going down the Dan Kennedy rabbit hole, the Gary Halbert rabbit hole, all these different rabbit holes. And I was just like, wow. And I just got fascinated. And I had already been doing marketing and stuff, doing club promotions, but it was just a different type of marketing, right?
Yeah.
So I was obsessed. I was hooked. And fast forward through all the trials and tribulations that took me through, we're here having this conversation.
I love it. I love it. I love the story. I love hearing it every time, because it just cracks me up to when you said, you guys knew this and you didn't tell me. That's the best. That's the best. And I should kind of tell like everybody listening, full disclosure, I happen to be the president of communications for Client Attraction University. Because once I heard him, I had to be a partner. I had to be involved. And now they can't get rid of me. So
100%.
So, a person who had only had one job in their life and said, I will never work for anybody else, can't wait to work for this dude over here. So it's the craziest thing ever.
Hey, MD Nation, can't get enough? Can't get enough? Hey, I've got another free training that I'd love for you to see. How to Add Another Million This Year. You can watch it for free by going to www.627figures.com. The number 6, T-O, the number 7, figures.com. You will see the 3 easiest things you can do in your business right now to get to the million faster. It's my favorite thing to do is to teach and train, so you can go and hang out, have some fun, and learn some stuff from me. Go to 627figures.com.
So, you have so much business knowledge and there's so much of that stuff out there already. I want to ask you some stuff that, I don't know, maybe people haven't asked you before, or maybe they have, but as a single for life gal, how in the world did you pick your spouse?
So it was crazy. So again, I used to be in the clubs, right? So God met me where I was, right? We're learning, getting introduced to this industry was in the club. Getting introduced to my wife was in the club. So I saw her one night. She actually was a bartender, right? So, but the club I saw her in, she wasn't bartending, but she had her uniform on. It was a referee uniform, right? Because the bar she worked at was called the 50-yard line. So, the referee, you know what I'm saying? So I just saw her and I was like, I just saw her and I was like, all right. So I just kind of shot at, well, I didn't really say anything the first time, I don't think. Well, I think I did. I think I spoke, we chatted, we didn't really go into in depth. So I was in another club another night, and my homie and his girl, they were like, such and such was asking about you. And I'm like, who? And they told me, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I saw her at this other spot. So I guess when I talked to her, she came to them and was like, who is this dude? You know what I'm saying? Who does this dude think he is, kind of thing, right? So, cause even when I was in the streets, I was like a lot of people call me unassuming now, right? So you can imagine when I was in the streets, I was like the same dude. People what is he doing? So I moved the same way. So she was kind of doing her research, and I was like, oh, she did, huh? So I'm like, okay, got it. So I saw her at another club. And then we started chopping up. Here's the crazy thing, Richelle. So I had my studio, and outside the studio, it's a storefront. So we had the big sign. It was called $1 Billion Enterprises, right? Marketing, blah blah blah. And I had, let me see if I found one right here. But I had business cards and everything. I had a gold business card. It was paper, but it was a gold business card. So me and her, imagine we talking in the club, we on Bankhead, we in the hood in the club, we chopping it up. So I'm like, she drunk, I'm drunk, we talking, and we exchange information, but I give her my business card. So I'm like, hit me up, right? Let's connect. So, at this time, nobody probably ever did, especially kind of where I was coming from. So we end up connecting the next day. She pulls up, we was chopping it up or whatever. But I think the biggest thing what struck me about her is that, because when she pulled up on me, I had a brand new townhouse. I'm like 20, I'm super early 20s, right? It's probably 21 maybe at this time, 22. She pulled up. Because my mom had got this townhouse in this new area, and she knew the lady who she was getting hers from. So she connected me with the lady, because the lady wasn't going to ask me for anything. She wasn't going to ask me for check stubs, none of that type of stuff. But just on the strength of my mom, she was going to let me get the spot. So I got the spot right across the street from my mom. And then she was so she was pulling up, but she never asked me for anything. She just hit me up, hey, you're hungry, you need anything, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, this is interesting, right? So she just she was leading with value. You know what I'm saying? I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I was watching, I was paying attention, but me, I'm young, I'm still out doing my thing. I really ain't, I'm like, yeah, I'll hit her later, but I'm doing some other stuff. So I'm still kind of moving and shaking. And, and like women was kind of like my thing back then. It was like, I think that was genetic apparently from my dad, from what I heard. So I was just kind of doing my thing. So I kind of went through this whole transition. So when I signed up in network marketing, right? She signed up obviously because she was like, all right, she was leading with value. She like, okay, let me get in because you know what I'm saying? So she signed up, she was signing people up or whatever. And when I kind of went through this whole transition because like I had to like cut everything out because I was doing the network marketing stuff, but I was still in the streets, right? And then, so it wasn't working. And I ended up getting locked up for a warrant. I got out and I was like, you know what? I got to choose. So I chose the legit business stuff. So I went through this, I cut off the streets and that was my money flow. So I kind of went through this whole like, I pretty much ran through all my money that I had saved, like I went broke and I got evicted from my apartment. And when she found out I got evicted from the apartment, I ain't really say anything at first. And she was like, why you ain't been saying nothing? You know what I'm saying? So I was like, I'm just gonna get me a extended stay and I'm just gonna pay it weekly because I'm like, I've been there before, pay it weekly, I can build my money back up or whatever. It's like, well, that don't make sense. You're gonna spend $200 a week or whatever, $300 a week for an extended stay. You can just get your apartment for a few $100. And I'm like, so she found the apartment, $400 a month, paying for it, all this stuff and stuff. So she was like rocking with me even when I was going, because she met me, I was up, and she was rocking with me even when I was going through this like downward spiral, right? And even hit like rock bottom. And even when my mom was going through like her phasing out, right? She was taking care of my mom and stuff like that. But when I saw her like still rock with me, even when I didn't have anything, she would leave with so much value. It just, even when I wasn't making the best decisions in the situation, I was like, this really the one. And the crazy thing is, she was about to go out of town one time for a funeral, and she had ended up checking my Facebook for some reason. And I was chatting back and forth with this girl. And I walked into the house and I saw she was looking. I'm like, okay, what's up? And she walked out, saw the messages. I'm like, all right. And I had went through this a whole bunch of times. So I was like, okay, this might be the end, right?
And So you could see she's looking at your Facebook and you say, what?
Yeah, and she walks out and I'm like, so I looked at my message and I'm like, so at this point, and like, we've been here a few times, right? We've been here a few times. So, and I was like, all right, this may be the end. But I know how that, I'm like messing this up, right? So she leaves and goes out of town. I call my mom and I'm like, I'm thinking about proposing to Vanessa. What you think? But I'm broke. I'm like, do you think I should wait till I get my money back up or no? Or just do it? And she was like, just do it. You know, Vanessa love you, blah, blah, blah. Everything else will work itself out. So, so that's kind of to that point. And then we just built it all the way back up.
Woo. Well, my favorite story is how you are super confident, and you were super confident even when you were driving the Camry. That did it not go in reverse, or it only went in reverse?
It didn't go. The reverse went out, so it wouldn't go in. It wouldn't go in reverse.
What? So where did that confidence come from? Were you always confident? And did that start early? Because I think that's probably the number one secret to entrepreneurship, is just being confident, right?
Right.
So where do you think that came from?
I think so. So one thing is that when I was younger and I used to be like getting in trouble at school and so forth, one of the things my mom used to always say is like, don't be up there being a follower. Russells are leaders. Russells are leaders. Even if I'm the ringleader of the situation, your mama, parents are typically always thinking like, you're being a follower, right? Like, it can't be my baby. My baby ain't doing that. You being a follower. But I'm like, but she would always say, Russells are leaders, Russells are leaders. But I think the biggest thing is like, I think early on, I was always just experiential. It's like I was willing to experiment with certain things to see how it would work out. So I think some of it was like innate, because it was like I came from such a low place in my life early on. It's like everything was a win. it's like, cause I come from like, I told y'all before, like I used to eat MREs. Like I used to live with my aunt the first part of my life. And people who don't know what MREs is called, is meals ready to eat. So it's like when my aunt's husband, he was in Desert Storm. So he used to send back MREs. And my aunt was like, she was on drugs really bad. But she raised me up until like 3rd grade. So we used to like eat these MREs sometimes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, all that. So it's like, I come from that. So it's like every opportunity was like an opportunity to get better. So it's like, what do I really got to lose? You know what I'm saying?
I love that. Love that. So as a 9th grade dropout, when did you become a reader?
So I think so. I was always kind of a reader, but not really. So in 10th grade, when I dropped out, and I got no. Before that, I got suspended for 10 days. So I got suspended for 10 days. I think I was in 9th grade then. And my mom, I was like, I'm thinking, all right, let me just lay around the house. So my mom woke me up and was like, oh no, you ain't laying around the house. Like you going to work with me. So she took me to work, and she was in telemarketing, and she was amazing at it. They used to call it like the Michael Jordan of telemarketing. So I went, and she made me sit in the what's the room where they snack at, the
the break room?
The break room. I sat in the break room, and she made me read A Time to Kill. Right? Wow. Okay. Yeah, so she made me read A Time to Kill. I don't know why, but she was like, you're gonna do something. So I read A Time to Kill. It probably took me like a day or two to get through it. And then crazy thing is, once I'm done with it, I came out on the sales floor, and I sat by her, and I was like, all y'all doing is reading the script? And she was like, yeah. And she was like, you want to try it? And I was like, yeah. So she was like, here, she gave me some leads, a list of leads. So I started calling some, and I'm just reading the script. And I got one person to say, yeah. And the way it works is like, you got to fill in the form, and then you send it up to what they call a capper. So you send it up to the capper, and the next thing I know, I heard the capper ring the bell. Boom, 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 Marquel, XYZ. I was like, what? Somebody just bought it. So I made $800 that week, and I ended up buying my first car. But to answer your question though, about, that was one of my first books. But when I got into the music stuff, I bought this book called, I forget where I got the book from, but I got this book called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman. Right? So I'm probably maybe 18, something like that. I was younger. But when I just became I guess it's a voracious or ferocious or just obsessed with reading, was when I got introduced to network marketing. Because network marketing introduced me to personal development. It introduced me to Jim Rohn, and I started hearing things like leaders or readers and things, and they started recommending books. And then I read the Robert Kiyosaki's and all that different stuff. I was just obsessed, with the book. So that's when the obsession kicked in, when I got into network marketing.
That's awesome.
Hey, MDE Nation, I have some openings to work with me and my team on building your own $1 million business. Or if you already have the $1 million business, you want to add another 2 or 10. Hey, let's spend some time together. The easiest, fastest way is to make sure it's a good fit is to go check out my free training, how to add another $1 million to your business this year, right? You can go grab it for free by going to www.627figures.com. The number 6, number 7, figures.com. You will see the 3 easiest things you can do in your business right now to get to the $1 million faster, and see kind of how my brain works and how we actually work with our private clients. I'm excited to help you add that extra $1 million to your bottom line. Let's have some fun.
Gosh, so, tell me about client attraction. Like, why did you go into attracting clients instead of, no, the better question is, did you attract clients when you were in the music business or in the drug business? And did it just automatically translate into internet marketing? Or how did you come into client attraction instead of just going and hitting people over the head?
So great question. So actually, when I was in network marketing at first, I was hitting people over the head, right? Because it was like the thinking around network marketing is like, talk to everybody who comes within 3 feet of you. And I kind of would say I don't really like. So some people would say, okay, I'm an introvert, and I would say part of that is true, but I think a bigger part is I just don't deal with people I don't know, right? I'm just like cautious of who I deal with, right? So I was like, I don't talk to certain. I'm not just like openly talking. Like my wife's totally opposite. Like she's never met a stranger, right? We'll be in line at the grocery store, right? And I'm sure I know you're the same way. Like we'll be in the line at the grocery store, and she'll be in a full-blown conversation with the cashier or somebody in line, full blown. Me, I'm the type of person almost like, I hope they don't say anything to me. Right? Unless I'm in a different, sometimes I'm in the mood and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I'll start a conversation, but I'm not a huge small talk guy, right? Unless we gotta be talking about something, business specifically. So the attraction. So they were like, hey, you gotta talk to people come within 3 feet of you. And I'm like, that's just ain't my thing. Like me just cranking up a conversation who I don't know and tell them about, it's like, that's just ain't my thing, right? And then they were like, you gotta invite people to your home and do a presentation. Number one, where I'm from, you don't bring strangers to your house. That's number one. Number two, all of my guys, my closest warm market that they call, were guys like me in the streets. It's like, I'm not bringing them to your house, right? And you talking about all this money and all that. Like, I got homies that'll rob you.
Yeah.
Like they'll come back and they will rob you, right? Like these are the people I grew up with, like, they will rob you, like no mask. Like that's the homies I grew up with, like was around every day. It's like, I'm not bringing my people to your house. So I'm like, it has to be a better way. Yeah. And then what I got good at was getting the people who work, getting some of the people in front of the people who my uplines who were presenting. So it's like, look, all you gotta do is get the people in front of me. I'll do the presentation, blah, 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 or I'll talk to them. Great. But once I start rank advancing, they start making less money off of me because I start rank advancing. So they was like, now you got to start doing presentations. And I'm like, dude, when I signed up, y'all told me I wasn't gonna have to do presentations. Now you're telling me I got to talk in front of people? I'm tripping. But one of my mentors used to always, she was like the one who was getting the most money. She used to be like, when I stood up, my check went up. And she was like, and she used to be the one, she used to always say, if I make $20,000 a month, that's a bad month for me. And I was like, wow. So I was like, I read Dale Carnegie's public speaking book. I was like, I gotta figure the speaking thing out, because it seemed like that's where the money at. So I was hitting people, I was spamming people on Facebook. Every post on my Facebook page was about the opportunity. I'm DMing people to the point, this was like before Facebook jail. I think my wave of people probably created Facebook jail. We used to send out so many messages every day, to the point where Facebook wouldn't let us send messages anymore. And we used to be excited about it. We used to be like, oh, we marketing. And we used to think we was marketing, right? Like, so to answer your question, we were going super hard until I learned that, wow, the goal is to actually become the hunted and not the hunter. And how do you do that? By this thing called direct response marketing. Yeah. And I was like, this is nuts. This is nuts,
right? Same thing, always same thing. Well, and I think I am a learned introvert, so that I love being by myself, but I learned that I make money being an extrovert. So I get up to be an extrovert, and then I have to go and hermit for a week.
Yeah, 100%.
And people say, I would never think so. No way, you can just get out there. I'm like, that's a learned skill.